very much. We now go to my other friend from Pennsylvania. Ms. Scanlon is recognized for any questions she cares to pose.
Thank you. As I hope this discussion has demonstrated, immigration and border security are pretty complex issues, and as such, they require nuanced and comprehensive solutions. Unfortunately, neither of those terms describes H.R. 2. It's pretty clear that our colleagues don't actually want to promote meaningful reforms that are required to secure the border or fix our broken immigration system. Instead, we've got a completely unworkable bill, and without any real solutions, we have instead inflammatory rhetoric, conspiracy theories, and political fear designed to stoke fear and chaos. We saw how the failed and inhumane immigration policies of the previous administration weakened our economy, undermined our moral standing in the world, inflicted permanent harm on migrant children and their families, and didn't make us any safer. H.R. 2 would waste American taxpayer dollars building a border wall that experts have testified time and time again will not solve our border issues. Instead, we should be investing in infrastructure at the ports of entry, where 90% of fentanyl and illicit drug smuggling is actually happening. And most troubling of all, this legislation puts children in harm's way, even as our colleagues claim that they want to protect children. It opens the door to jailing kids indefinitely, bars them from seeking asylum, and denies them access to representation that they need to navigate our complicated immigration system. During my legal career, I spent decades working on immigration cases, and I know the system is broken, but I also understand the realities many of those arriving at our border face. I represented kids and other asylum seekers who come to the U.S. to flee gang activity, political violence, abuse, starvation, trafficking, and other exploitation. People risk their lives to come here because the situation in their home countries is so horrific for all of those reasons. These conditions have been building for decades. This bill does nothing to address those conditions. During markup in judiciary and again today, our colleagues have tried to justify provisions that would endanger and inflict harm on migrant children by saying they wanted to send them safely home, ignoring the fact that the whole reason they migrated was because home was not safe, and in many cases, home didn't exist. These kids were orphans. Their families had already migrated. So, we need to recognize both the conditions that people are fleeing and the meaningful contributions that immigrants make to our country. We benefit from the talent and tax dollars that result from functioning pathways for work in immigration. We need doctors, care workers, agricultural workers, researchers, and more to make our economy work. We need the tax dollars from younger workers to keep our social security system solvent. So it's to all of our benefit to provide functioning pathways for people to enter the U.S. lawfully. This bill does nothing to fix our immigration system, so I deeply oppose its passage out of committee. Ranking Member Nadler, I think you had something you wanted to add.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to comment on what Chairman McCall said about that New York Times report. 85,000 children are not lost. Once HHS releases children to their sponsors, part of their post-release services are a follow-up phone call. If 3 phone calls go unanswered, the children are marked as unreachable on a spreadsheet. I don't know that any of us answer every unknown phone call we receive. The same situation happened under the Trump administration, and Obama's DPC director provided the same explanation.
Thank you, and I know from experience with representing kids in this situation, they are most often released to custody of a relative. So,
Yes.
Should we have more services to address the needs of migrant children, social services, representation? Absolutely. But I'm afraid the 85,000 talking point is, as some would call it, malarkey. Representative Thompson, was there something you wanted to add?
Yes, and thank the chair for allowing me to sit. For the most part, I've heard the comments, and I'd just like for the record to reflect that the bill we're talking about today and the section pertaining to Homeland, there was nothing about unaccompanied children in it. So it's that part that I think that we need to understand. Our committee spent those 16-plus hours, and there was nothing about unaccompanied children in the bill. As important is we offered a good number of amendments that we thought should have been considered. Not a single Democratic amendment was accepted. We wanted to increase the number of people working at the border. That was turned down. We wanted to level the pay of people working at the border. That was turned down. A number of efforts to make the climate of the employees better because there are people working side by side in many instances who are federal employees who are making different salaries for the most part doing similar work. So I look forward to the chairman going forward with this bipartisan effort. It's just that it didn't manifest itself in this bill. We got it 15 minutes before the deadline to consider, and we'll look forward to the bipartisanship that we have historically had in this committee, and that this bill is a radical departure from that bipartisanship.
Thank you. I think we did see the parts about the unaccompanied minors in the judiciary markup, and we only went for about 15 hours, so you worked harder than we did. But we similarly offered dozens of amendments which were not accepted. The part about unaccompanied minor children was particularly troubling given how vulnerable these kids are. And if they're going to be incarcerated, as suggested by the bill, then clearly Homeland Security has to deal with where they are placed. I mean, what this bill does do is probably a huge boon for the private prison industry, which will reap untold benefits from all the incarceration that is proposed by this bill. Not something I would recommend.
Well, you know, we keep them for 72 hours, and after that, the law says we have to pass them on. And that becomes the burden of HHS. Mm-hmm. So DHS is out of the business in short order, and all of what's being discussed about children becomes a function of HHS, not DHS.
I think that's under the Flores decision, but this bill, as introduced, will gut the Flores decision.
That's right.
So that's one of the big objections to it. I think at this point I'd yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much.